Hey everybody, this is Mr. Buro from Staten Island Tech, and right now we're gonna make polylines in AutoCAD. Polylines are different from regular lines, and they have a lot of advantages to using them, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't use regular lines also. So please pay attention to the differences, and I think you'll see the benefit very quickly. First, I'm just gonna draw a series of connected line segments with lines. And then I'm going to draw a similar series of connected line segments with a polyline command. Okay, so those are two very similar objects, but these line segments appear as detached from each other, even though I could grab onto common grips and change them and things like that. But they are, in fact, separate CAD objects which can contain separate properties like colors. I can color some of them yellow, and I can color some of them red or something like that. With a polyline, it's a single CAD object, which unfortunately can only have one color to it, but more importantly, it has a whole bunch of other features. Let's start again with the polyline command to see what features come up as I'm actually drawing it. So I pick a start point, and right from the beginning, you could see that I could switch to drawing arcs. I could change its width, and I could kind of try to specify a length that I want to draw by just typing a number if I wanted to. Let me pump out a couple of different segments first. And now you can see that I have the new option to close it just like a line segment would. So that's really not that different. But watch as I click the arc button, I switched from drawing lines to arcs right away, because in polylines, the separate segments do not have to be linear segments. They could actually be arcs, and I can change that back and forth as much as I like on the fly during creation just by clicking those buttons. In the arc creation area, though, there are many more options to specify like the type of arcs that you want to create. So you'll see those pop up down here as you're drawing these particular pieces inside the polyline. Also, after you draw a polyline, the grips are different from that of a line segment. Line segments have just the box-shaped grips that allow you to shift over the segment itself or stretch out one of the vertices. But the polyline has midpoint grips, and the midpoint grips also allow you to shift everything. But as you can see, it tugs on the other segments that it's attached to. And if you just hold your mouse over it, you could actually add vertices in or remove vertices whenever you want, or you can convert them to arc segments, which is a great function to have. Anything that you do end up converting to an arc segment can be unconverted back to a line just by doing the same thing. So arcs can become lines, and lines can become arcs. That's a beautiful feature of a polyline. Let's look more. I'm gonna make a very jagged polyline like this, maybe a couple of straight area segments, and then I'll make it kind of loop around like that. Now, I'll bring your attention in the Modify menu. Deep down here, we have this button. This is the Edit Polyline or PolyEdit button. When I click that button, you see it says P-Edit down here, and it tells me to select the polyline. Once I select the polyline, I have a whole bunch of options that pop up here. Close, join, changing the width, editing the vertex, fitting it to a curve or spline, decurving it, reversing it, and several other things that are like context sensitive to these. The close button does exactly what it says. It will close it together. So it's a closed loop, and I can reopen it if I want to because it remembers where it was closed. The join command will join two polylines together with each other. So if I drag this vertex to this vertex, and then I click them both, and I try to use the join command, then it does actually join it into one continuous piece, which is pretty great. I'm going to undo that though. Another great feature of the PolyEdit command, which by the way, PE is the shortcut for that, is the spline and fit. Spline does this, which it creates basically a whole bunch of curved segments, but it's made from jagged pieces. Those can be smoothed out more with a specific option. You could control them by clicking and dragging the original points by stretching these out and shrinking them. I'm going to undo that. I'll do a PolyEdit again. And this time I'll pick the fit. It's also curved, but it's a separate type of curve. And now the curves themselves were made into arcs to fit the exact points that I had chosen before. Instead of having what are called control vertices, these vertices are actually passed through. Okay, so that's a cool option of a polyline with PolyEdit. I could also, as we said before, change its width. So if I do that, I just click width and I can specify a distance like that, and it will give it that thickness, which at first looks good, but I don't think it's a great option to have, because when you click on the polyline, it still has singular vertices here, which is a little awkward, because if I was drawing a line segment, I might want to snap to this, and it really doesn't snap to that corner or that intersection at all. What it does, it snaps to the original vertex. So I'm not a big fan of thicknesses when it comes to polylines. I recommend highly instead to, if you want to create a thickness, use the offset command and just offset the lines like that. And that kind of creates the thickness. And those can be colored in, of course. Okay, so that's like a really great feature of a polyline if you edit it. When you're creating the polyline, if you're changing the width, that's a different story. If I change the width now to, let's say, a width of 0.25, you can see that it creates kind of like a thickness change right there. And that looks a little weird, but I could then go ahead and change the width back to 0. And it creates kind of like a segmented piece. So you could use that to create some arrowheads if you want to. I'm going to do that again real slow. So if I have a thickness in the beginning and I change that to 0 for the starting width, but then my ending width I'll put as 0.25, you can see it's kind of like an arrowhead. And then I have this extended length thick line, but I'll change the width again to 0 for the starting width and now 0 for the ending width, and do something like this, and it ends up being a nice arrowhead. So that's an interesting thing that you could do with polylines. You could change the starting width and ending width of a segment in the creation process, and then you could also edit those widths within. The PolyEdit command also allows you to add vertices in and do a few other things. So if I pick Edit Vertex, it actually points to a vertex right here, and I could continuously hit Next, going through them, and at any point I could pick to insert another vertex, and it will allow me to actually insert more vertices into the polyline, or I could just pick to remove them, of course, too. So there's like a lot of different options here when you're editing a polyline. It's a very, very good feature to have. So we covered drawing polylines and showing an arc. We covered closing a polyline, changing the width of a polyline, many other things. The fact that a polyline is a singular object will help you much later on in CAD when you're doing hatching, because if you're trying to color something, you want to always color within a closed object. The PolyEdit command has a lot of good features to it. I think the most convenient feature, though, is the curving feature. So if you wanted to kind of like have a rough idea of where a curve would be, like maybe you wanted to start it off shallow and then make it like more sharp as it comes down, you can go ahead and do that, and then pick Modify, PolyEdit, click the line, and then you could just do that spline thing, and it will curve it really nicely within that direction, and then you'll have control over it still with the control vertices. So that's a pretty cool feature to have, in my opinion. That's one of the best of the PolyEdit features. So that's really it. That's polylines in CAD as opposed to doing regular line segments. You can't do pretty much anything that I just showed you right now with regular line segments. Each of them has their own place. Use them both as much as you like. Thank you very much.